Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope the birds are singing. I hope the wind is at your back. Woo! Who doesn't love pop culture? I know I do. And I got some incredible young minds who are at the forefront of bringing to us the ideas of pop culture. I call this one a museum dose, ladies and gentlemen. So to my fellow disruptors and pop culture archeologists, today we're cracking open the vault of American mythmaking with not just one, but three brilliant minds who aren't just studying history, they're remixing it, recurating it, and calling it out in real time. Straight out of Christopher Newport University, meet the powerhouse crew behind the exhibit Made for the Moment, Glimpses into American Pop Culture. These are museum study renegades who know that culture isn't something you passively consume, it's something you confront, question, and sometimes completely dismantle. Aster McMillion is a curator of chaos and clarity, activist researcher, and walking college of academia and rebellion. Picture Gloria Steinem crossed with Indiana Jones if they were dropped into a Warhol print and handed a bullhorn. Andrew Brown is a tour guide through the simulation, part art historian, part cultural codebreaker. He'll take you from Rothko to Rage Against the Machine without missing a beat, all while interrogating who gets to shape the canon. And now joining the fray is the brilliant Lizzie Childress, or as the revolution knows her, Lizzie. She's a triple threat honor student, history major, political science and museum studies double minor, and student leader for more clubs than there are TikTok trends in a day. Lizzie's not just studying curational power, she's practicing it in real time, zooming in live from the exhibit space itself. Thank you all for being here today. How you guys doing?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're really excited to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the very warm welcome.
really great introduction.
It got all quiet for a minute. I'm like, whoa, we went deep on that.
No,
we went deep on that one. So tell me a little bit, let's start off with Lizzie. And maybe you can get, or whoever wants to start. Why don't you start off and tell me what exactly this exhibit is, what you guys are doing there, and give me some background on it.
So our exhibit is titled Made for the Moment, and we have a little subtitle of Glimpses into American Pop Culture. And so with the exhibit, each person, we did this as a class, and each person, we were able to pick a lot of different items that represent some different era of pop culture. And then we each curated a little exhibit for it. So we picked and chose which items we wanted to display to the public to kind of define our little pop culture area. And then we had a lovely exhibit design team and installation team that they put all of the things together in the lovely cases, and we can do a little rotation and show you them if you'd like, and separated them into different categories as well. So we have 6 different subsections of pop culture, kind of some of the overarching things over the past few decades of American history.
Nice. I would love that. Let's Andrew, maybe everybody can say a little bit about their part, but I would love a little tour. That would be so awesome to get to walk around and see, and maybe each individual can show me what it is that you did there. So let's do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start off with the tour.
We can start off with the tour.
Yes,
if someone directs.
Okay, perfect. We can first go to my section. So I
Okay.
was tasked with doing board games. I had around, I think, 5 to choose from that we got off of eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and some from Dr. Solomon's own collection. He was nice enough to lend us. I ended up choosing Scrabble, Yahtzee, and Chutes and Ladders. All 3 pretty classic board games that kind of span across the ages. And then with each lot, we were tasked with curating them in the shelf and then writing a shelf label as well as an attached essay that, of course, counted for a grade. But it was a really fulfilling process. It was a really interesting experience, especially, Aster, if you want to kind of get an aerial view here. See, there were pieces left in here done by actual players. So who knows when this is from, but Rick and Celeste have their score here on the card. And it was so interesting time seeing these classic board games, especially coming from as far back as the 1960s.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When it comes to these board games, what do you think these board games says about the attitudes of people? Can we extrapolate what people were like, or what some things fun they were, or what they did on their downtime? What are your thoughts on these board games and the way they worked in culture?
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting looking back, like I said, to the 1960s when these were created and manufactured mainly. There's a lot of emphasis on morals and values, especially with the younger audience and younger generation, teaching them, to do their chores and to not talk back. And they would progress in the Chutes and Ladders game. And then if they did something like naughty or not nice, they would be pushed back down a few slides. So in terms of development, this was definitely a learning experience for a lot of young children. And then moving forward into more strategy games for older audiences, it's interesting to see how Scrabble was used as a form of entertainment. And I think it carries over into today's modern age with these apps and with these games like Wordle that we still have on our phones and use on a daily basis. We're still kind of fascinated with the art of, wordplay and anagrams and stuff like that. So it's interesting to think about how a lot of these games are really timeless. And I know I grew up playing Chutes and Ladders in the early 2000s, and it goes as far back as, ancient India. So it's a game that came from way back when that we still utilize today.
Do you think that the games of those times, like those particular board games, were a way in which to teach child about the rules of society as well as having fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of play, I looked into a lot of different play styles, childhood development is structured in a way to teach young children about what they're to be expected to do in society. And it's interesting when these things are very meticulously curated and gendered, especially. We have a section that you'll see in a minute titled Gendered Play, and it's interesting to see what is marketed to what audience. Even different areas in the world. Of course, we didn't really branch out beyond the United States, but in my research, it's interesting to see how different countries experience that phenomenon.
Yeah, that's amazing to see. So you stayed in the US. Would you say that it seems to me a lot of these games are recognized around the world? Like you could go to Sweden, or maybe if you had a foreign exchange, you could go to the house, you could probably see Yahtzee in there, definitely Scrabble on some level.
Yeah.
Did you notice that as well when you were doing your research?
Absolutely, especially with Chutes and Ladders, it has a rich history across. It went from like India to Germany, to Africa. So it's interesting to see how it traveled throughout the world. And a lot of these games are now, formerly Milton Bradley, now owned by Hasbro, are translated into thousands of languages across the world.
It's so interesting to see the world of board games and culture teaching us about centralization.
Absolutely, you wouldn't expect it, but it does, truly, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's pass the mic around and see what the next particular window has to offer for us.
We can just do like an overall tour.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So this section that is within that Andrew's thing is within. Oh wait, here. Oh yeah, like I'll angle it a little bit. So this is going to be the evolution of games. This is one of our 6 subsections of the exhibit. And then moving over to the next one that we have, which is our background for today, it's going to be the as seen on TV section. So this covers a lot of things like Sesame Street and Coca-Cola and Disney and the Flintstones. And then the next little subsection we do have is the gender play section that Andrew was just talking about. So we have a whole bunch of different kinds of books, and like kind of you can see the progression of the books as kids would age. Like this is kind of the way that things would differ. And then we have some other toys as well, so like the Beanie Babies and the G.I. Joe and the American Girl dolls and the Cabbage Patch dolls, just to kind of show like the different aspects of play during history. And then this, I'm with my AirPods case. This is an extension of the as seen on TV section with the Disney section. We have this lovely little record that unfortunately didn't fit in the display case, so it is out here for the public to kind of see, not touch because it's really old and kind of damaged. And then over here, we have our next little subsection is entertainment technology. So we have all these different things from like the Viewmasters to like different forms of music. So the Walkman, all the way up to the iPod. Is that a Nano or something? I don't know. And then we have a bunch of different kinds of cameras and stuff as well. And then our next little subsection we have is Music Mania, and my exhibit is in this, so we can come back to that. I'm not going to do the last one, but so this one kind of ranges from like Elvis to Woodstock and the Beatles and like all of that kind of like those big like music movements that we had in the United States. And then our last little subsection is going to be in the news. So this features things like the moon landing, the first American moon landing, and then also the JFK assassination as well as World War II. So just some of those kind of like big things that like you wouldn't, they're like historical events that you wouldn't really, I wouldn't, at least for me, I wouldn't really think of them as pop culture, but like they did have such a big impact on America and its culture. But then, so for me, the specific part of the exhibit that I curated was the little Beatles section. So I had a selection of items that were provided by Dr. Solomon in his personal collection, because most of the artifacts, actually all of the artifacts either came from Dr. Solomon's personal collection, or they were things that he purchased with his own money off of eBay for us to do. Very sweet, because he did not have to do that. He's definitely transformed this course into like a real world curating type of thing, so we can get that experience before we go on the job market. But so I picked 3 records to highlight from the Beatles that I thought kind of expressed like more of their pop culture. The Yesterday and Today, which was unfortunately it's the suitcase one, not the original Butcher Baby. Kind of a bummer, but you know, it's okay. As well as Yellow Submarine, and then the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band record. And then there are just some other like magazines and like a collector's guide to like collecting Beatles artifacts as well, because that was such a major thing in America, was collecting all of the different Beatles things. And as well as like there's a little member fan club pin and a photograph. There was like Ringo Starr when they first came to America in like 1954 maybe. He randomly pulled up next to this car of high school kids and took a picture, and then they got together like 50 years later and recreated the picture just for I think a book he was writing. So yeah, just like to show how the Beatles have really like still stretched across pop culture. And I mean, I say that as someone who still listens to the Beatles today, like not having grown up in the 1960s at all. So yeah.
It is absolutely fascinating, and I love that you chose music, because I'm not sure that there's anything more powerful than the language, than song and performance and music when it comes to cultural revolutions. And if you just look at the different albums there, the Lonely Hearts album, like you can just see like this incredible transformation that's happening in the world. And you know, people are discovering mushrooms, and they're discovering LSD, and they're they're rocking to Jimi Hendrix, you know. And what can you bring us up a little closer on those album covers so that the guests can kind of see this whole transformation happening right here?
So like this, the Yesterday and Today one would have been like one of the earlier albums of the Beatles when they were still in that kind of like typical like just coming over from England kind of innocent type of stage. That's on like one of the magazines as well from when they first came over, but then that kind of transitions into the like more psychedelic Yellow Submarine, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So yeah,
it is so amazing to see. In some ways, okay, let me ask you this: as someone who's curated this particular event, and you chose music as a part to do you see where we are now as a parallel to that time, or what are some similarities and some differences that you see in your world today versus that time?
I would say like I think some similarities are definitely like the kind of hysteria that can surround music, because like you'll have like these artists that will like pop up and everyone's like going like feral for them, or like one song releases and like it's like all over TikTok or Instagram or social media or something like that. So I think that kind of like crazed hysteria is there. I don't really think the longevity is still here, because like, you know, in the past, like stuff like Woodstock and like the Beatles and Elvis, like that's timeless. Like we still talk about those artists today, like in our time, and that's like decades after like they were at their most popular. But I know like today we have like such a quick, like a nature of just such quick changing fads and trends. So like an artist can be popular for like a week, and then like something new comes out, and then that's popular for like a week. And so, and like people can like come back and resurge like their popularity. So it's just very like kind of like not volatile. I don't know. It's just very like ever changing as compared to like a kind of like a longevity of like just like steady, like, yes, we all know who this is and we all like this person. But yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say that I come in there with my daughter and my son. My daughter's 11 and my son is like 5, and you have this beautiful setup that you have right here. Can you tell me and my family a little bit about it? Like pretend like we're there and we're for the first time trying to understand what music is, and you are the curator. Can you give us like, tell us about this beautiful piece over here? What would you tell us?
Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. This is kind of hard. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd probably start by asking you guys like what kind of music you like to listen to. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's do it here. First off, it's a great question, and thank you for asking. I really love these pieces behind you. I've been listening to like a little bit of some Fleetwood Mac. You know, I kind of grew up with like the Hendrix and the Doors, and lately I've been revisiting that kind of stuff. I also like a little bit of punk rock, but Yeah, I'd say I'm kind of a throwback. And it seems like there's some of that stuff in that cage back there.
Yes, yeah. So within this exhibit, it does like the whole music one as a whole focuses a lot on like kind of music of the past and like, some of the more like popular highlights of like Elvis and then the big craze that was Woodstock, which was just in the middle of like the summer of love, like hippie movement kind of thing. And the Beatles as well, which kind of like they were an English group and they came over to America and just sparked this like mass hysteria. So it's like kind of, it just focused a lot on the past, but I feel like a lot of these characteristics do carry over to the present and like with like the development of music as we see it today and like children's music and stuff like that as well. Like a lot of the songs that you hear were probably inspired by like many of these artists in like this time period as well. So like, the more popular, I don't know, like there's like lots of, I feel like kind of just psychedelic artists now, or like people just have the freedom and the creativity to do whatever they want with music. And that probably wouldn't have been possible without these people of the past, like pioneering that for us.
Well done. I think me and my kids got a bit of an education right there. Thank you for that. That's super awesome. All right, let's take the next leg of the tour here. We have one more student that's awesome. That's got a beautiful presentation.
Perfect.
So I am a project manager. I did not have a lot to curate this year. I did my curation last spring, so spring 2024. So I curated for that exhibit, and then now I was brought back as a senior project manager. So instead of having a specific lot and museum like role, I oversaw all of the other teams and made sure, like I was helping Dr. Solomon starting in the fall, like the end of the fall semester. So back in December and then early January before we met as a class for the first time. And it was fun getting to see the exhibit progress from a different point of view. Sorry, I'm out of breath at holding the camera up for the tour. Knocked me out for some reason. But I oversaw the education and assessment team, the project manager or the PR team, and one more that I cannot remember off the top of my head. I believe it was the installation team. So I helped and oversaw all of them and just like checked up with them throughout the semester. I was a behind the scenes person for the curation of the exhibit and just like an advisor to the newer curators as they were going through the process of creating this exhibit. So my role was a little different than everyone else's.
It's awesome. It's cool to get to play different positions and thoroughly understand what it takes for everything to work in conjunction with each other. Like there's a lot of moving parts and it's easy to. Now, let me ask you this. As a curator, are there people fighting for like the best space? Like, no, I want the upfront space up here. Have you seen my piece? Like, it seems like, whenever you're dealing with artists on some level, there's this little bit of like, I want this piece or that piece. Is that something you have to deal with as a curator?
I think there was a little bit of fighting, not fighting, but there was a little bit of
jockeying
tension when when the curators this semester were picking their lots. I think the Beatles and Elvis and Woodstock the music ones were all very popular groups of items, and so there was some discussion about who would get which lot. But I think there's always a fight for the best spot, and I don't think we had necessarily fighting or like tension over who was displayed where, because we had Andrew as part of the exhibit design team, and he was able to put together the design and layout of the exhibit in a way that was cohesive and it made sense, and it put everyone in their own spot, and like everyone was highlighted in their own way.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me. When people go to a museum, most people see it from the point of view of the visitor. And when you do that, you're like, oh, I'm going to go to this museum and learn different things. I'm going to learn about this, or I'm going to get to see this. But maybe the three of you could tell me what you learned by what it means to have people come in, because you see people go to different things and you're like, oh, I thought they'd go over there, but maybe they went over there. So maybe each of you could just take a moment to tell me what you learned about the people coming in and setting this stuff up that the normal person might not know.
Yeah, I'll start. I think it's really interesting being on the curation side of things, I grew up going to a ton of museums, and you don't really think about lighting or wall color or where things are positioned within the space. A topic that we discussed a lot this semester was wayfinding, which is a fancy word, but it essentially just means how people walk around the space. And we definitely did a lot of trial and error with how people move around the space, what draws their eye into certain sections of the room, because we do just have one room. So we were really intentional with where we placed the items on the exhibit design team, how we installed the vinyl lettering, what the colors were, what the theme was of those colors. So a lot of different aspects that go into how people, progress through the exhibition and how they move around the space, definitely.
Right. Lizzie, what do you think?
It was really interesting. For like the day that the exhibit opened, it opened at one of Christopher Newport's. We have Paideia, which is like a kind of a research conference where like different students can present the research that they've been working on all throughout the semester. And so our exhibit opened like that same day because most of the stuff happens in the library and our exhibit is in the library. So I signed up for a shift to like kind of stand in the exhibit and like watch people come in. And most of the people that came in were like had been invited by like friends, whatever. Like not very many people. It is kind of like a little off hallway in the library. You kind of have to like be looking for a study room to find where we are because there's not a lot of signage about it outside of this room. But I like my roommate came and she's not really like very much like a history person or a museum person like at all. And it was really cool like getting to watch her like walk around through the exhibit and stuff like that. Like she was really, and like one of my friends in the class curated the World War II section, and like she was like my roommate was looking at that section, and like there's like within that section we have like an atomic bomb like guidelines kind of thing, like it's like a little pocket size, and people would carry it around for like the guidelines, and like I was telling her like, oh, you should go look at that because it's really cool, and like that was just really fun to see kind of like her eyes light up in like this historical like way that she never really does when I'm talking to her about what I'm learning in my history classes. And then also as well, like there was one story of that I was told by some people who were in here. Like there was I think an older man came in and was like looking around, and he saw the G.I. Joe doll and like the display case, and like audibly gasped and was like just going on and on about like how much it reminded him of his childhood. And then we have like a little like, I don't know what that's called. I guess it's like a frame, frame like thing where you can put a sticky note like on it with like your favorite pop culture memory, and like kind of reading through all of those and seeing like what like this exhibit has brought back like nostalgia wise for people has been really fun as well. Like getting to see how it impacts the public, I think was really cool to learn for me. So.
Awesome. Dr. David Solomon, we love you. What an amazing individual. Thank you so much for all this, man. I'm so grateful, and I know that these students are as well. Like it's such a treat to get to spend time with you and get this in here too. I got some guests that are asking questions. Are you guys okay maybe taking some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I think that you guys have a whole different, like I'm almost 50 years old, and I think you guys are considerably younger than me. So it's going to be awesome to get to hear some of the differences. And so my audience has a different idea too. So the first question is, in a world where TikTok trends last 15 seconds, how do museums compete with or complement that kind of instant cultural consumption?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question.
I know this semester we did a lot of discussion about pop culture as a whole and how trends cycle through. I'm not entirely sure how museums are going to adapt moving forward. I think our exhibit specifically, we really tried to capture the more nostalgic aspects of pop culture instead of the 15-second trends you see on Instagram and TikTok and everything. And I feel like there's a place for that in museums. I feel like it could be incorporated into a museum's like mission and like education plan, but maybe not like the central aspect of an exhibit or museum.
Yeah. And I know that there are a lot of institutions that are utilizing these social media platforms to their advantage. I think it's funny you discussed the gap in age, because there are a lot of Gen Z interns that are coming in and utilizing what they see on their social media feeds in order to better support the reach that they get, the audience that they get, and the people that end up coming in to these institutions. So it is definitely a blessing and a curse. I think there's a lot of work, like Aster said, that can be done on the end of these museums in order to, stand firm in what they're presenting in these fad times when things are so fleeting. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves as time progresses.
Yeah.
I definitely think I feel like the kind of 15-second trends, I feel like they could be a good marketing strategy for museums to utilize, as long as they keep their content inside their museum the same, and they do their rotating exhibits and stuff. But using the trends as marketing to get people to go, I think is a good thing. Because I interned at the Poe Museum this past summer through a program at CNU, and while I was interning there, someone made a video about the main curator. I was just an edit of him talking about chairs or something like that, and it got over 1 million likes on TikTok, and it was just really funny to me that was something that caught momentum, and I think probably got people to start going to the museum. So I think it can be useful for boosting attendance, but it shouldn't be it shouldn't take away from the main point of the museum and the mission of it.
Yeah. Those are awesome answers. It would be epic to see some sort of dynamic displays. I think that for the younger generation, they really want to be part of the actual event. And it seems if you look at some of the museums or art installations are kind of moving in that way. And some of the art installations and museums seem to be merging in some different aspects, which I think is amazing. We got Dr. David Solomon chiming in over here. He says, what were the most satisfying and challenging parts of the project? Who wants to take that one first?
I would say definitely the most satisfying was getting to see it all come together, because I was in charge of taking pictures of all of the lots while they were still in our workroom, and before anyone had chosen them and before we had started work. And so seeing it go from just a bunch of random items on a table to on the shelves, curated with shelf labels, the transformation is amazing. And the fact that we did it in 2.5, 3 months is incredible, because we're all very busy students. I would say that the most challenging part was also the time crunch, because we are all busy students. We all have other academic and personal and work lives that we have to attend to. And so getting this all done in such a short amount of time, I'm proud of everyone, all of the curators and the other project managers, and very thankful for David Solomon to help us along the way and everything.
I think echoing Aster's sentiment, it was definitely a challenge getting it all done in this short amount of time. Normally when you're looking at these institutions with bigger budgets and, bigger staff, they plan exhibits, 2-3 years in advance in order to get everything assembled in a timely manner. And it was interesting to see how successful we were at it. It was so gratifying to see everything come together before the due date. And it was a real team effort. Everyone pitched in, everyone had their own, part that they were really, really good at. And it was just a really fulfilling experience overall.
Yeah, kind of echoing those same sentiments. Definitely the most satisfying part was watching it all come together, seeing it just go from the pictures of the lots and the shared Google Drive that we all had to the 6 different sections and all of this wonderful room that we're in right now. For me, the most challenging part was picking what I wanted to put out on my lot, because there were so many cool things within there that I just I was I want to show all 6 of the records that I got, but I cannot fit 6 records and 2 magazines and a book in one shelf of this exhibit. So kind of figuring out because as the curator, you do kind of have to pick and choose what you want the public to see. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a really important and challenging role as well, figuring out what aspects of the history you want to share with people and educate them on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fascinating. On some level, you want what you put out there to be contagious. You almost want to infect them with an idea that is nostalgic. And that's a tricky thing to do. I mean, you're looking at color schemes, and then you're looking at dates. Do I put them in this order? Do I put them in that order? What's your, maybe you could talk about your strategy for that. What is it? Do you want your nostalgic piece to infect people, or is that the wrong terminology, or what do you think?
I know for me personally, especially with the board games that do bring back such a sense of nostalgia because we play them growing up.
Yeah.
And that's where we have a lot of our fondest memories, I think. I definitely wanted there to be some takeaway when people came in and when they looked at these pieces, as we all did. We want someone to, take away a little piece of our exhibition, but I also want there to be reflection, I think. I think that can be the most impactful thing about an exhibition like this. And I think in including all of these pieces of physical media as opposed to everything being digitized, it was a really effective way, especially for our generation who is growing further and further away from these pieces that are actually able to be held in our hands, to kind of reflect and think about how beneficial they are to keep, in society in this growing age of digitization of everything.
That was really well said. I agree 100%.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this one. This one comes to us from Betsy, and she says, in your opinion, is there a tension between preserving the past and participating in the now? Can museums do both?
I think the entire purpose of museums is to do both, because it's like bringing you the past in the now so you can like connect it. And I think a lot of like movements that are trying to happen in museums currently is like making it so that the past is more so connected to the present, so people can understand like why they're here and why they're learning about this. Because if we can't, like it's like history, it's always the phrase like history like repeats itself or whatever. So like it's kind of like an endless cycle. Like if we don't learn about these things that happened, we may just continue to repeat them. And if we don't like learn about like all of these things that have happened and how they're affecting us now, and like what decisions in the past like have led to today, I think I don't really know where we'll end up if we like kind of just stop talking about the past. But it's like more so just like trying to connect it to the now, and I think that's the most important aspect.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? Go ahead.
I feel preserving the past is so important, especially like the more obscure things of our history need to be preserved, and people need to be educated on them. And museums can do a great job by connecting the past to the present and making it more accessible to all parts of the population, as well as making it interesting, because some people just are not interested in learning about history. But if the museum can present it in an interesting way that connects it to something more modern or something that they will understand, it's a way to get people to learn about the history and understand where our society has come from. And hopefully that'll help us understand where we're headed to in the future.
Yeah, really well said. And it brings up my next question of, walking through a memory or walking through a museum is sort of like walking through an actual novel, and what kind of responsibility do you have as curators? Like, you could create a theme if you wanted to. Like, if you have a popular museum that's catering to maybe, children between the ages of 5 and 9, and you have stories of rebellion, you've got David over there with the sling, and you've got these, you know what I mean? Like, you can create the future stories of heroism in the minds of the youth. Is there a responsibility for curators to build these themes for kids to walk into to live a better life?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic that I think a lot of curators are having a discussion around, especially when things like funding come into play, because there are outside sources that want to push an agenda, especially in an institution that is so easily accessible to a lot of the younger generation. And I do think that it is a curator's responsibility to be as unaffected and uninfluenced as possible by any biased sources, because it is a responsibility that a curator has to portray these stories in a way that's both easy to understand by these younger generations and also as true to the truth as possible. And that's something that I really admire curators who work with those topics, because it's hard when you're discussing the history of this country being built on the backs of slaves and things like the Holocaust that bring in genocide. And it's like a tricky line that you have to walk when it comes to balancing what you can show to like someone like your son who's 5 years old, and what is the actual truth of the matter. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, people may not know how tricky it is, but especially if you have money on the table and you have a wealthy donor that's like, listen, man, you want that new wing, right? This is what we're gonna do. It's kind of crazy. What do you do? But it's a metaphor for life. Who do we got over here? Okay, Lighterhorn. What's up, Lighter? Thanks for being here, man. You're an amazing human. He says, I discovered the Beatles, Dylan, and the 60s in 1996 and probably abandoned the contemporary culture a little too much, faced with the wealth of the past. That's an interesting thing for you guys to think about, too. Maybe you are turning people on to things and ideas they've never had before. What do you guys think?
I think it would be really cool if we could, like, turn people on to like ideas that they never really had before. I feel like for me personally, like when we were going through all the lots and stuff, it was very nostalgic. I haven't thought about a lot of these things like since I was a kid, or like didn't even really know like about a lot of these things and stuff like that. So I think it's like really cool, like how this can like really, you know, bring up that kind of nostalgia like aspect that we've talked about a lot already.
Yeah.
But I think it is really cool about like influencing people's ideas as well. Like, you know, like showing them something that like they can still like participate in now, even though it's like decades after it was really popular.
Yeah.
You know, the thing with nostalgia is it's something you can feel. Like you had mentioned the man that came in there and he saw the G.I. Joe and immediately he's back into his life of like, yeah, playing with G.I. Joe. And same thing with Barbie or Big Bird or Barney or listening to the Beatles on some level. Is there, how do you define nostalgia? Like, how would you describe nostalgia to someone that maybe be young, or what are your guys' thoughts on that?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a super tough one. It's a super tough one.
I don't know. I feel like when I first saw these lots, specifically some of the toys we had over here, we have a Rubik's Cube tucked in the corner back. I was obsessed with that as a child. I could solve it like within 2 minutes or something. It was crazy. But I hadn't touched one since I was like 10 maybe. And so seeing that, I was just like, like that's a part of my childhood that I completely forgot about until I saw that moment, like saw the item. I think items hold such memory for us, whether it's like the specific item from our past or an item that looks similar or just like a recreation of it. I think nostalgia is just, it's so powerful because it brought back like seeing one single piece of plastic basically just brought back hundreds of memories that I completely forgot about. So the nostalgia is just like a wave of memories, I guess. Like for me, at least, that's how I felt with the Rubik's Cube.
It's a beautiful answer.
Yeah. And I think that nostalgia is so closely linked to the curatorial experience because it's about creating that experience for people. Again, when they come into this exhibition, we wanted them to be transported back to a time, you know, when they first discovered the Beatles or when they last picked up a Rubik's Cube. And it's interesting to try and define something like that because it's, I think, different for everyone. You know, no one has the same memory when it comes to something like a board game or, you know, listening to a song. It's all about a personal experience. And it's both really tricky and also really easy to incorporate that into something like this. Again, it's like blessing and a curse. It's like hard and easy to do, like a lot of things in curating. Yeah.
And I think one thing about nostalgia too is that like it's kind of hard to define because it can go like over the span of so many different years, and like you can be nostalgic about specific things from different time periods. Like looking at, like, for me personally, like the Viewmaster and stuff, like we have some of those in the exhibit, and I like seeing those was like and I was like remembering like when I would like play with the Viewmaster in my house, and like I could like hear the like little click and spin and stuff, and I'm like looking at it and thinking about those memories, and I'm like maybe 8 or something in that kind of time. But then like for the Beatles and stuff, like that brings back a lot of like more recent nostalgia for me because I started listening to them in like end of middle school, like early high school, and like my dad and I would always put on it was like the one music we would like both kind of like and like could agree on, so we would put it on when we would drive to Tennessee to like see his family and stuff, and so we would just listen to the Beatles, and like Peter Asher was like ranking all of the songs, like, and we don't like Peter Asher in my household. I don't. I think he's kind of annoying. Sorry. But like so that brings back it brings back like that nostalgia from like just like a couple years ago, like not even too long ago. But I think that's, and again, like what Andrew's saying, like it is really closely linked with the curatorial process because you want to like give people nostalgia from like any kind of time period, not just like, you know, the 1700s or like the late 1900s. Like you want them to be able to feel it like from like throughout their life within the exhibit.
I think one other thing that we discussed nostalgia a lot this semester when we were doing the mission statement and just the early stages of the exhibit. We have pieces from the JFK assassination as well as World War II. And so there was the question of, do we even want to bring up this nostalgia? Because there is good and bad nostalgia. And some people are affected. We're affected negatively by those events. And so it's like, this is a really heavy topic we're bringing into our exhibit. How can we address this in a manner that is appropriate? And so like the negative side of nostalgia was like a fine line we had to walk as well. And it was a big discussion we had.
Yeah.
I love all those answers. And it's fascinating to me to see some incredibly intelligent young people working with the symbols of society that can change the structure of it. You know what I mean by that? Like, it's the symbols that we collectively imprint on that can fundamentally change the way we see ourselves and through this world. And if you look at uprisings, or you look at the different propaganda through the time, or you know, nostalgia, like all of these events and the ones behind you, the music, the totems, all these things have a way of having a collective imprint on all of us. And when we see them, feel something. And it's so, I'm so thankful for you guys that are back here researching it and studying it, because I think you hold in your hands the future of the vision of the world. Like, if you can really begin to harness what nostalgia is, if you can really begin to understand like the Jungian idea of a man and his symbol, watch out, because the museums are going to be epic with you guys behind them, you know, and I'm so thankful for it. David Solomon again, he wants to know, in your research on your objects, what was the most surprising thing you found out about an item? Let's take it all the way around the horn here.
I think for me, I think it was surprising to learn about the process. All the games that I had were produced by Milton Bradley, and it was interesting to learn how he came about making these different board games, because at the time it was the Great Depression, and he was looking for an escapism and a way to lift the national mood. So I think the first game he created was something similar to Scrabble, or it was some board game that he whipped up and then started just distributing to people around him in order to put their energy into something other than this depressing, national mood of the Great Depression. And it then grew from there, and even taking inspiration, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, from things in ancient India and these board games that have been timeless classics. So it was really interesting to learn about the process that those all came about into the modern society at the time.
I love it. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think for me, the most kind of shocking was just learning more about the different records and stuff within the collection. Because I've seen the covers and I've listened to the songs, but I never really did a deep dive into them. And the suitcase cover of Yesterday and Today, I did not realize that the original one of that was the Butcher Baby one until I Googled it, and the Butcher Baby one came up. And then I learned about this whole recall it was released for a couple of days, and everyone was what is this? This is horrible. And so they had to immediately recall it and replace it with this new image. And then now the Butcher Baby ones are really, really rare and really cool and collectible for a lot of people. And I think there was a couple different variations of there's the Butcher Baby, and then there's Butcher Baby ones that have the suitcase one pasted on top of it or something. So if you peel I think there was some kind of thing where you could uncover it and find the Butcher Baby one. And then there's just the regular suitcase ones that they started printing. And the Yellow Submarine one was the film. I haven't seen the film and I really want to see it, but the back of the record I thought was really cool, because it's describing all this stuff and placing it it talks about all this it talks about Adam and Eve in the Bible on the back, and then leading up to the American Revolution. I'm these were some very odd historical markers to have picked out to frame Yellow Submarine in the blue beanies and stuff that within, but that was just kind of really cool to learn about.
It's so fascinating to me to get to see and hear about all of it, and just to see the way in which the world doesn't really, what do they say? The world doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Okay, here we go. This one's coming from Nick. He says, are you worried that museums could become the next platforms for state-sponsored or corporate storytelling, especially in a culture obsessed with branding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mainly. We discussed a lot of that during our time in class, and it is really scary to think about how easily these things can be bought by like the elite, wealthy class. But I think everyone in the museum field that we've interacted with, at least, has the same kind of sentiment and thoughts about it, about standing firm and not, giving out to, as hard as it is, external funding that may influence the museum's mission. And it's unfortunate that a lot of museums are nonprofit institutions that rely so much on funding that's so hard to come by, because it would be a whole lot easier if it was just, given a whole bunch of money that you could do whatever with in order to be, uninfluenced by someone who's super biased. But that's just not the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's an interesting time that we live in.
Yes.
I got it.
Yeah.
When I say the word authenticity, like, what is the relationship between museums and authenticity? I know that's a crazy question, but it's on my mind. What am I going to not ask it?
I think curators and museums have to be authentic towards like the history of the item and like how it was intended to be viewed and what its intended purpose as well. I feel like museums, like if they aren't authentic towards the history, then they're just spreading misinformation, and that can lead to a whole lot of confusion and chaos. Yeah. And I also think curators have to be authentic to themselves, like in the way they write their shelf labels or mission statements. Like they have to be authentic to the history, but also to themselves and to their morals and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like it. Lizzie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what Aster said. I mean, authenticity is kind of like the whole purpose of a museum. Like it is one of the museums are like kind of the main way that the public can be like fully educated and like can kind of, I would hope that they can trust that they're getting like a good education from a museum when they go. And like that is like where the role of authenticity really comes in, because if like museums aren't presenting things in authentic ways and curators are not presenting things in authentic ways, then we just get a whole bunch of like what Aster said, like a bunch of like misinformation and just kind of things being spread. And like misinformation, especially in today's time, like in amongst like people that like, like just like the people in America, the people are like, we are the governing body kind of ish. I don't really know anymore. But like if we're like basing decisions and things like off of that or with like misinformation that we have in our minds, that's not good. And museums should strive to be like the number one leader in authentic information, as they are so closely tied to the public.
Yeah.
I love it. That's a beautiful answer. Maybe if we just shift back to this actual exhibit, like how much longer is this exhibit going on? And do I got to get a ticket early, or what's going on here?
It'll be in Christopher Newport University Tribble Library until about February of 2026. Yeah. So this exhibit will stay up through the summer and fall semester, and then starting next spring semester, there will be another museum studies class that'll have their own exhibit with their own theme and items, and they'll take down our exhibit and put their own up. So it's just a continuing cycle of different exhibits and everything.
It's awesome. It's awesome to get to see the full cycle from setup to fall and, to move new stuff in there. Yeah. As we're kind of coming close to landing the plane, I just wanted to take a minute for each individual to maybe talk about where they can find you, what you have coming up. Maybe we can start over with Lizzie, and maybe you could talk about, maybe just in summary, like what you found to be the most beautiful part of what you've done so far in this, and then where people can find you, like your Instagram page and what you got coming up, and then we'll just go down the line.
Yeah. So the most, I don't even remember what the first question was. I'm so sorry. My brain is fried. It's almost finals week. My brain is not
right.
What was the first part?
What do you feel was the most beautiful part of this experience?
Yes. Okay. I mean, we've already kind of said it, but like just like seeing it all come together, like right. I like never would have. I mean, going into college, like I thought I wanted to be a teacher, And like I slowly like realized that museum work and like curatorial work is like what I want to do with my life. And I never thought I'd get an opportunity to like practice that before going in the real world. So like this has like been a really satisfying process to kind of like go through it all and like, you know, practice like having to like pick your favorites of items, which I'm a very sentimental person and I hate picking favorites of objects, but having to do that and like just seeing it all come together, like with the essays and like the shelf labels that we wrote with them, like that was just really, that was probably the most satisfying thing for me. What I have coming up, well, I guess my Instagram page, is just my personal one. It's just like at Lizzie, I don't know. If you search Lizzie Childers on Instagram, you can probably find it. I have a bunch of information. It's like CNU honors and whatever. So like there's a picture of me. So if you, I don't know if they see this video, but I look the same in the picture. I hope, I really hope. And then I guess what I have coming up, nothing like super crazy right now. I'm going on study abroad this summer, but like I'm in a public history class here right now, and we're working on virtual exhibits that I'm currently procrastinating on, and it's whatever. I'm gonna finish it at some point soon, but they'll be going up at Christopher Newport University's Torgler Center for the Fine Arts in 2026 for VA 250, which I don't know if anyone outside of the history world is aware of that. But just like celebrating like, you know, the 250th anniversary of like the American Revolution, all that stuff. I'm writing an exhibit about salt and like its importance in like colonial Virginia and stuff. And so that, along with a bunch of other exhibits from people within my public history class, will be up on display in the Torg starting in June 2026, and they'll be there until October 2026. So very, very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
I think for me, the most rewarding and the most beautiful part is seeing everyone's reactions and seeing everyone's feedback about the exhibition. It's been, like we've said 1,000 times, really rewarding to see what everyone thinks and how everyone's been perceiving the experience that we put together. And it was such a great group of people. All of our peers and all of our classmates really worked well together, which made the experience a lot more fulfilling and easier overall. And thanks to Dr. David Solomon, we've had such a smooth process with getting everything together. And we would not have been able to get as many items on our own without his help. So very, very thankful for him. As far as me, I am hoping to intern at a few local institutions over the summer, and I am currently an intern for the Torgler Fine Arts Center, like Lizzie was discussing, and we have a really cool installation and exhibition coming up next year, but right now we do have a ceramics show on display with a lot of different international artists. We're a fairly small institution with only one main display room. So if you happen to have any local listeners in the Newport News, Hampton Roads area, it's a super cool exhibition, free to attend, and it's really neat. You should come check it out.
Awesome. Looking forward to checking it all out.
I would say one of my favorite things for this process was one, getting to get to know everyone and getting to work with everyone. We had a great group of people. And getting to take a class with Dr. Solomon again was fantastic, and it was a great year with him. And then one of my second favorite thing was during the installation process, I was helping install some of our gendered play items. And so I set up like the American Girl doll, and I grew up on American Girl dolls, and so it was fun getting to kind of play with the American Girl doll, not play, but like interact with the American Girl doll again. And that was just a fun time. And then other aspects of the installation process, it was like, wow, I haven't held this item since I was like 5, 10, like a young child. So it was another nostalgia factor for me. And then I'm graduating in a couple weeks. May 7th,
Congratulations.
I will be graduating from Christopher Newport University with a degree in classical studies and museum studies minor. And then I'm going off to graduate school at Brandeis University up in Massachusetts for a master's in ancient Mediterranean studies. So I will hopefully be able to continue some work in the museum field when I'm up there as well.
That sounds amazing, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I'm super thankful for all of your time today. It was really cool to get to check it out. And I think that the future's in good hands. I love the way you guys described what you're doing. And I love the items that you chose. And I love the backstory behind it and what you learned about it. So hang on briefly afterwards. I'll talk to you briefly. But to everybody else within the sound of my voice, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful day and go check out the museum. That's all we got.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.